Something that we're becoming known for in the pool world in terms of our creations and what we're doing in terms of pools is taking old things and reclaiming them and using them and repurposing them in a new way. Now, it's not really because we're part of the green movement and we're trying to save Mother Earth, which that's all really important and there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, my reason to do it is I believe that everything has energy, and everything we know is energy, but it has an energy that comes with it. So if something that was produced 100 years ago, 150 years ago, carries with it a different sense of what it is. So for example, one of the most common reclaimed things that we use is barnwood. So take for example a barn that existed, that it survived, that it was functional during the Civil War. So 150 years ago, it was surviving, it was there, it was being functional, doing its thing, and it survived throughout history, and then it's either collapsing or needs to come down, and we reclaim that wood. So can you look at it and go, oh, that existed during the Civil War? I guess you could, but it's more of the feeling of it. So when we're working with it, it draws out of us, the artists, the people that are using it for something, a whole different emotion, which then helps us tell the story. So as we're talking to the client, as we're working on the project, we're talking about the wood and the material. Because it wasn't material that was just found on a stock shelf somewhere and put in a cart and hauled to the truck and you bang it together and you make something. Instead, this is something that has history. It has its own story to tell if it could tell a story. So when we're cutting that wood and fitting those pieces into whatever we're building, we don't have the luxury of, just cut up it any way you want, and if you waste some pieces, it's okay because you can go get more. In a lot of cases, you can't get more. So you become very delicate and very precise and very cautious when to make that cut, how to make that cut, because you know there's a limited supply. Now you can go out and find other barnwood and other reclaimed things, but especially when you're on a project, when you have just enough of the right material, a whole different set of love and different set of experience goes into that because of that. So that's one example. Another thing would be just finding something really cool at a garage sale or an antique shop or wherever in your basement and saying, wow, what if I use this in a completely different way? So for example, I had an old bed frame. It was an old metal bed frame and it just looked like an old metal bed frame. But I used it to create sort of a window shadow box in a fence. So we cut a hole in the fence, we used that, we put something behind it, lit it, and now that shape of that bed frame, or that headboard, now became something visually interesting. So that could have gone to landfill and could have been thrown away and we could have built something more generic, but instead we took something that had energy, that had a feel about it. So why the reclaiming? I think number one, it thrills us, the artist, on the hunt, on the finding cool things, to do something unique with them. It's also looking at everything, looking at your world from a different perspective. Because if you look at that thing is only what that would normally be used for, you miss what it could be used for. And that's the fun part of reclaiming, is taking an item and going, wow, that would be really cool if we turned it upside down and did something completely different with it. So that's the importance. It brings an energy, it brings a feeling, it draws an emotion. And quality really, to me, comes from the emotional connection to it and how it serves the customer and how it serves us, versus the scientific part of it. Is it at the right material, at the right temperature, with the right quantity, and done in the exact manner that it was designed to be built in? That's quality on a scientific level. Quality on an esoteric level, which is really what we sell, is how could we take things that people would know what they are, turn them into something that looks completely different, and they can't believe that over there was once a vase and now it's a ship cannon. Or and that type of situation allows us to look in our world completely different. So every item we see, every piece of junk we find, every scrap of whatever's left from whenever we do something could be used for something else. Doesn't mean it is. We don't just collect junk to have it. When we see something in an item, then we turn it into something. But if we don't see anything, we scrap it like everyone else. It's not like we're hoarding junk just to have it, but when we see an item that would make sense to be used as something else, or used for the same purpose, just reclaimed. So an old ship lantern, which, you know, just becomes a shelf collect on someone's collection on a shelf, or gets thrown away, we reclaim that and make that into a low voltage light, which is now functional light again to light the yard up. So those types of things, when you look at reclaiming, you look at a whole new energy, and it's not a cheaper way of doing anything. Quite often, reclaiming takes more time and money because you're investing your time in the search and the hunt, but are also having to purchase things and have to take things down, and so there's a lot more to that. But it brings a whole different energy to it and completely different feel, because if something has a weathered and worn feel to it, it looks completely different than a wall that was just freshly painted white. So if you take an old barn wood that most of the red, it was red washed at one time 100 years ago, and most of that red is bled out of there, but there's still some, that looks completely different, has a completely different feel than going to Home Depot and buying cedar plank and holding them next to each other. They're both cedar, but one has this age, this patina, this feel, this energy, this sense of long days gone by, and the other one is just a piece of wood. Which one would you use? I guess certain styles, someone would like just that brand new piece of wood. For us, we'd rather do the feel, because we can create an environment that enriches people's lives. And in that way, that's the type of customer we look for, is someone that would appreciate that and not just want the freshly painted walls. There's plenty of builders out there that will build freshly painted walls and everything is exactly clean. There's not that many people that do what we do, that really look at life from that the long game of 100 years ago and 100 years in the future. Most people live right now, about now, and only the newest, nicest, coolest, cleanest thing. I look at what it was 100 years ago, what we can turn it into now, and what it's going to look like in 100 years from now. And by doing that, it just gives us a whole different approach and a very unique and, to me, idealistic, because it's taking something that doesn't have any use anymore and giving it use. And that's an ideal situation for me.